Hello, hello. Welcome to the worst stream idea I've had. Probably. Definitely worse than Survive. But yes. Hello. I know I'm starting like an hour and a half late. That is because I'm bad at this job. So... it is what it is. Now give me 1 second to Google something real quick. I need to get a date real quick. Okay. Oh dear, it's like actually 4. Okay. 1, 2, yeah. Okay. Maybe I should have gotten alcohol for this. Okay, so, if you don't know, this past week, and by that I mean the 24th of August, issue number 46 of Fantastic Four came out. And that issue marks the end of Dan Slott's run on the Fantastic Four, which started in August 8th of 2018. It had been about 3 years since the last run on the Fantastic Four, because Marvel is stupid. But it was, of course, kind of a momentous occasion that the Four came back. No one thought it would happen. I definitely thought it wouldn't happen. Granted, Dan would not have been my choice to bring back the Four, but it is what it is. I neither dislike Dan Slott as a writer, nor like him that much. He's very middle of the road for me. I'm not one of those, like, Spider-Man fans that want him dead. That's for certain. That's a little extreme. But I also don't have much experience with Dan Slott. I'm not a Spider-Man reader. The only thing I've read of his was his, like, prior to this series, was his run on The Thing from 2002 or 3, which was a mini-series, it was a mini-series, whatever. So, it is what it is. Now, to understand, like, the state that the Four were in at this time, after the, just to catch everyone up, right? Because I plan to, like, talk about all of Dan Slott's runs, so we need a little bit of preamble, set things up. So after the events of Secret Wars, the Marvel multiverse was destroyed. And Reed, Susan, and the Future Foundation left the universe, so Earth 616, to basically recreate the multiverse, leaving the world behind to create a world for the next generation. This made it to where Ben and Johnny were stuck in Earth 616, and they thought that Reed and Susan were dead. The world thought that Reed, Susan, and the Future Foundation were dead. And that's just kind of where they left the Fantastic Four in 2015. It kind of sucked. Like, sure, audiences knew that Reed and Susan were alright. They just chose to leave the world behind. Kind of dumb, but okay. That's how they decided to leave these characters forever, presumably. So, in the 2018 run of the Fantastic Four, we pick up right there with mostly getting back with Johnny and Ben and kind of seeing the state of the world in a post-Fantastic Four world. Which isn't exactly bleak, but it's not exactly fun either. Issue 1 has someone using the Fantastic Four flare, which gets everyone very excited, because they're like, oh my god, is the Fantastic Four coming back? And even Ben and Johnny, like, look up at the sky, and Johnny gets excited. Ben less so. He's... Ben is Ben, right? Yes, this is the window that I want. So, Johnny went to go immediately investigate the flare. Because he's excited that, like, his brother and sister are coming back. Anyone would be excited, right? After thinking they've been dead for multiple years, it's a whole thing. Ben doesn't, and instead just wallows in despair over the whole ordeal. Like, nah, it's nothing. And of course it was just some prank kids who got a hold of the flare gun. It's not like the cheeriest thing in the world. That's for sure. Hello, Cirrus. Oh, I forgot to say hello, Ian. I'm sorry. So it's just kind of... That's kind of the state of the world, then, right? They actually do... I'll give Slott this. He does a fantastic job in these first issues of his run on the Fantastic Four to really show why they matter in the world of Marvel, right? Despite the fact that, like, no one in, like, real life really cares. They matter a lot, like, in the universe. So there's a lot of, like, TV broadcasts going, like, yup, there's still no Fantastic Four. They're still dead. That really sucks. The scene that, like, personally got to me was, like, the individual interviews with other members of the Four that are still around. You know, Medusa, Crystal, Luke Cage, and Jennifer. Like, all mainstay members that kind of mean a lot to readers and to the team. And they're all not happy that the Fantastic Four are gone. And you really feel that. You really feel that in these, like, this opening chapter and issues that just, like... The world without the Four in Marvel is kind of hollow. And, like, it really is. I remember trying to read, like, comics every now and again while the Fantastic Four were gone, and it's like... They would just occasionally mention them, and, like, it would never feel good. But the most important thing, I think it's the next image, that happens in this issue is that because of how dour the mood is, because Ben wants to really move on with his life and not get stuck in the past, he actually proposes to Alicia Masters. Man, this is the slowest burn romance to ever exist, isn't it? Imagine, like, waiting 60 years for the couple to actually get together. Someone who started reading the Fantastic Four in 1961, who would probably be, like, 70 plus years old now, was probably really happy that this finally happened. I know, like, I was really excited, even though I had only been reading the Fantastic Four for, like, a decade at around this point. So that's just really nice. It's like, oh my god, is Ben gonna finally be happy? No, but, you know, he's getting there. So it's fine. But of course, like, the major conflict that like arises isn't that the four are still dead as a team, but rather Ben asks Johnny to be his best man, and Johnny refuses. Kind of an ass, a little bit. Oh, hello, Michael. Hello. Because, of course, there's only one man that could possibly be Ben's best man at his wedding, right? It's gotta be Reed Richards, who's still alive, we hope. We hope. Right? I kind of hope. And you know what? Like, as much as I can complain about this run on the Fantastic Four, this first issue is really great. Like, yeah, it felt amazing at the stinger of this issue, where, like, everyone who, like, past members of the team or people associated with the Four, like, look up at the night sky, and you know what you're going to look at when you turn that page, and that's, like, a signal from Reed, which is, it's beautiful, right? It's absolutely beautiful. It's such a great way to, like, end the first issue. Sure, everyone wanted the Four back together in the first issue. I certainly did. But to save that for issue 2, I was also fine with that. But of course, we can't have a comic book without, like, an actual, like, plot and thing, right? Right. So, as I said earlier, Reed, Susan, and the Future Foundation have been recreating or making a new Marvel multiverse to, you know, just so that they have a multiverse again. And they do this with Franklin's powers because he is both an Omega level mutant and has the power cosmic, so can just create things out of thin air. He can bend reality to create anything. And because of the events of Secret Wars and combining his powers with a character named the Molecule Man, they can just, he can just create whole universes out of his imagination now. It's what is Omega level? Oh, an Omega level mutant is just like the highest class of a mutant, so it's characters like Jean Grey, Storm, Professor Xavier, Apocalypse. Like, it's just like there are tiers of mutants, essentially, if you didn't know that about X-Men, and Omega is just like the highest tier. These are usually like characters that can just warp reality at will. Heck, I think they mentioned Scott's Omega level at one point, and I just kind of laughed at that, because, like, it feels like that was just a way for them to, like, try to make Scott seem cool. But it is what it is. But something's wrong with Franklin, right? He can no longer just create universes from his fingertips anymore. And this alerts the power of an entity that's been sleeping within, like, the Marvel universe. And their name is the Griever. And the Griever is just a eternal being within the Marvel universe. She represents, she even says here, like, I am entropy. The Griever at the end of all things, you know, typical, like, Marvel cosmic / celestial shit. Or I guess, I don't know, maybe if you don't read the comics, that's a foreign concept, but it's pretty normal that you'll just have, like, beings in the Marvel universe that represent, like, concepts, but in, like, a physical form. It's fun, right? And she just wants to, like, she wants to wipe universes because she's interested in, like, the end of all things. So she doesn't like Franklin being, like, basically the creator of all things, which is fair, you know? Like, that whole opposites thing. And she just immediately wipes out Reed, Susan, and the rest of the Future Foundation. She can just, you know, she's a cosmic level entity. And Reed kind of by himself can't really overcome that. And Reed makes one final gambit, which is he challenges the Griever to, you've only defeated me, but you have not defeated my family. Allow me to fight you with my family. Then we will see who the winner is. And the Griever accepts, thinking that he will just call in Johnny and Ben. Which is also reasonable, right? It's the Fantastic Four, right? But of course, I kind of like this moment. It's fan servicey for sure. But instead, Reed calls in every member of the Fantastic Four. Anyone who has ever been a member of this family. And that's beautiful. It's a big celebration event. It's the return of the Fantastic Four. I'm okay with it being, like, a little fan servicey. Maybe a lot. Even though Hulk isn't here because reasons, I think he's the only member of the Fantastic Four that isn't on the splash page. And there are reasons for that. More plot reasons. Like, in the Hulk comic, which is he's in hiding at the moment, so he can't... The world is supposed to think that Banner is dead, so it'd be weird if, like, he showed up. You know how it is. But it is a cool moment. Like, it's kind of hype. And it's fun to see everyone again. I don't think, like, most of these characters have, like, been standing next to one another for quite some time. And they even included Herbie, the little robot in the corner, who's from the original Fantastic Four cartoon from, like, the 60s. He was, like, made just for that, and somehow made his way into the comics, but it's kind of fun. It is what it is. And because I can't help myself, right? I'm sorry about this. I have to include this little interaction, which I absolutely love. Which kind of defines, maybe not define, maybe that's not the right word, but I think, like, shows off the Four to maybe a new reader. Since the Fantastic Four is all about, you know, the team and the family. And I thought, like, this little exchange is really fun, where the only person in the room with enough power to defeat the Griever is Franklin Richards, Sue and Reed's son, since he, like, you know, he's, like, one of the strongest people on Earth, whatever, right? But he's also, like, 13, so he's got some problems. And Peter, trying to be encouraging, like, starts to try to give his, like, with great power comes great responsibility speech that, like, he's known for. And Ben just, like, picks him up, moves him aside, and says, no, not happening. Shut up. Don't put all that shits on a kid's back. Franklin, don't pay attention to this guy. Listen to your Uncle Ben. You know, you know how we win in times like this? Somebody knocks us down, we get back up. And we keep getting back up. Till what needs to be done gets done. And he also says that, I said we, because you aren't alone. Because they're a team. Yeah, it's sappy, and, like, I get it, but that's comic books, right? Like, you kind of have to have that kind of writing, or else it doesn't feel right. But, like, as an opening act for, because this was like a full 5-issue arc, whatever. Big fight, it is what it is. I think Slott kind of nailed it. He, like, got to reintroduce the Four to a new generation. It was really hype for returning readers that, like, have missed these characters. Even his jokes are pretty fine. I do love this whole exchange, which after the battle and everything, because this is a very comic book moment, right? Where you have Peter saying, like, speaking of which, Logan, is this you? Are you back? Or is this an old you? Or an alternate past version of you? Or, we ain't talking about it. Fine. What about you, Ghosty? Are you the one I know? Or the guy running around with the Avengers? Or, got it. Not talking about it. Like, there's just a lot of really cute interactions like this throughout this story, and that's something that Slott nails for now. I definitely don't indulge that much later on in this by throwing in panels that are just like quippy jokes, because he kinda, I don't know, he kinda loses it later on, I find. But that's fine. But we do, after the Forever storyline, right? By the way, yeah, that's what they decided to call the first story arc. It's like Forever. I get it. Yeah, right? It's 4. It's clever and it's not at the same time. As I said earlier, Ben and Alicia are finally getting married, right? That's cool. So we start to actually, like, enter that phase of the story. And I find most of that story underwhelming and uninteresting. Sorry, Dan. But there was one issue that I really liked. And it was an issue from Susan Storm's perspective. I'm sorry, Susan Richards. She's married. Yes, the artwork in this issue was meant to be a big throwback. Your mileage will vary. But we get to, like, understand what Susan thinks about Ben and Alicia's relationship, and, like, all of her concerns and all of her hopes, and how she still to this day thinks it's her fault that Ben feels awful about being alive. Which, like, is that true? I don't know. She is the one who gave him the name The Thing on accident, which is this scene, where as soon as Ben transforms into his rock monster form, like, her immediate response is just like, he's turned into something, and that's how he gets the name, right? And Susan, till this very day, regrets saying that. I mean, fair, given how Ben views himself from that moment onward, but yeah. But you get to see, like, how much she does care about Ben throughout this issue, and everything she wants to do to make sure that, like, he can live a happy life. Most of it's flashbacks, and the main crux of the issue is that, like, Ben wanted to learn how to dance again so that he can waltz for his wedding, you know? But he kinda, you know, it's hard for him to dance with his current body. And he actually hurt and maybe hospitalized some teachers in the process of trying to learn, before calling up Susan and asking her to help him how to dance. Because of course she can just put force fields around her feet so that Ben won't step on them, right? It's cute. It's really cute. I loved this issue. It's adorable. Though there was still an issue with Ben and Johnny kind of getting a little bit of brotherly love, I guess. It's cute, but there's not much there. Unfortunately, during this storyline, he didn't get an issue with Reed, because you're meant to think that Reed doesn't care about Johnny, and that's proved to not be true by the end of the story, but I still would have liked a fun bonding issue between Reed and Ben. Oh well. We don't get that in this run. Well, we get it way later, but not during the wedding arc, I guess, which is when I would have wanted it. But that's unfortunate. And it's a pretty uneventful for the rest of that storyline. I kind of have no real complaints for like how Slott constructed. I think the official name of this storyline is like Mr. and Mrs. Grimm. It's kind of boring outside of like the one issue that I really like. Because I think the next slide, yes. We transition to the Herald of Doom. Where Doom gets his own herald. I forget her name, I'll be honest. I think it's like Victorious or something. I don't know, I'm gonna call her the Herald of Doom from now on, just because I can't remember her name, and I don't care about her. She was kind of a wasted character. I hope she never comes back. Or maybe a writer later on can do something with her, because she's a new, like, original character. What's a herald? Kind of like a servant. I almost want to say forerunner, but I know that herald. An official messenger bringing news. Okay, so that is the official definition. Oh, whoops. We will move this here. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So in the Marvel universe, there's a being named Galactus, and he has what are called heralds, which are just his servants that he sends out to planets. So a character having a herald is more referring to like that kind of relationship of like master and servant between like Galactus and his heralds. And because Doom thinks himself God, he's like, well, I need a herald. So he gets this woman sneaks into his castle and begs and pleads for him to save their country because, oh, by the way, if you didn't know, Dr. Doom just owns a country. Its name's Slotvaria. It's very medieval. It is what it is. It's kind of fun. But he just, like, you have Dr. Doom, he owns a country, which gives him, like, political immunity with a bunch of countries, because they have, like, contracts with Latveria for trade and shit, so he ends up having, like, fun amounts of diplomatic immunity. But he was kind of, like, neglecting his country for a bit, so she was like, please, I beg of you to return to save us, blah, blah, blah. So he's like, oh, cool, fine, I'll also make you my herald. Here, have the power cosmic. Shit's lit. So... it's a whole thing, Michael. It's a whole thing. It's been around since, like, the 60s in the comics. It's actually hysterical. I absolutely love it. But, I actually think this is, like, one of the worst decisions that Dan Slott made in this run. And I say that because, so, at the end of Secret Wars, in the 2015 storyline Secret Wars, Doom gets healed. So he no longer has his burn scars. His body's all good. And because Reed is gone, and his parting words to Doom was like, I believe in you. So, like, at the time, Doom really took that to heart and tried to become a hero. Like, Reed's gone, he has no reason to, like, try to one-up him. And he actually became Iron Man for a bit. Tony Stark died. That was a whole thing. Civil War II. So, yeah. So, Dr. Doom became Iron Man and was, like, a hero for a bit. And I'll be honest, I never finished reading those storylines, so I don't know if, like, there was, like, a hard fall from grace in those stories. But I actually, like, would have liked if instead of Doom coming back as, like, a full villain, he came back as, like, a third-party hero that was, like, still was kind of an antagonist to read, but was still kind of a hero within the Marvel Universe. I kind of wish Dan took that approach, rather than just going like, here, have the mask again, here, you're now all about taking over the world again. Kind of felt like a cop-out to me, but it is what it is. Even though I do like the plot of the Herald of Doom storyline, which is thus: Doom gave that girl the power cosmic to have Galactus be attracted to Earth again. He's like, oh, there's now like power cosmic shit. I have to go and eat that, right? And Doom did this so that he could like capture Galactus and use him as a generator to create free energy across Earth. As just a flex, because he's just like, look, I'll get rid of Galactus so he'll stop eating worlds, and he'll now provide us free energy forever. Sounds pretty good, right? Of course, that is like killing a living being, and like it calls into question a lot of like moral ambiguity of, is it right to just lobotomize Galactus and use him as a battery? Which Doom hand waves, you know, as it were. But of course that doesn't sit right with the Four, and they have to rescue Galactus from Doom's plot. It's a whole thing. I actually don't like this story. Like, it's funny that like that was Doom's plan. But it kind of fumbles, I think. Like, Doom is a little too just evil in this, like, and not in, like, a Doom kind of way. It is fun that he's, like, forwarding his own actions and thinking about, like, oh, I'm doing this as a political stunt to look good to, like, a national audience. I mean, a global audience, not national. But it kind of just... It doesn't really land, I think, in the way that I think Slott wanted it to. Especially since this was the grand return of Doom. It just feels flat to me. Which is unfortunate. The next story arc that Slott would write is simply called The Thing versus Hulk. Yeah. So if you don't know... Ben Grimm and the Hulk have a rivalry dating back to 61. It's just been a part of those two characters since basically the start. So they've always had like an on and off like rivalry. But in this storyline, it is Alicia and Ben's honeymoon. So they are doing their thing, right? They're going on this vacation together. Cuddle up. Also, Ben looks really cute in this shirt. Doesn't he? I think he looks cute. But there's this whole thing with Ben, right? So if you don't know, once a year Ben can turn human. And when I mean once a year, I mean like he took a potion that would make him human, but only for like a set amount of, like, for a week. So for 1 week a year, he can turn human. But it's on the anniversary of him drinking the potion. So it's like every beginning of summer, like, I guess, like the beginning of June, like that first week, he becomes human for that. And he cannot turn that off. He cannot turn that on when he wants to. It is just like, cool. He basically has to take the week off from being a superhero, because obviously he's not the Thing anymore. But of course, this is meant to be like, oh shit, now that we're married, we can use this, and it's so close to, like, my week as being a human. We can go on a honeymoon and maybe try to start a family. They are literally on the clock for... They have a week to try to start a family. Because once he becomes the Thing again, they have to wait a year. Which sucks, right? Like, you have these, like, boomers that just want to start a family, and it's just like, okay, we could only try it once a year. Sucks for them. But sadly, I almost asked, like, oh, do you know who the Puppet Master is? I think it's probably safe to assume the answer to that is no. But Alicia Master's father is the villain, the Puppet Master, who can, like, use radioactive cosmic clay to control people. So he sends the Hulk after Ben because he's like, I don't want you marrying my daughter. Is what it is. So you have this amazing panel, which is both amazing and gross at the same time, where Ben has like 1 minute to fight the Hulk before he becomes human, and does it. He wins. It's the first time Ben has a legitimate victory against Hulk. Yes, he's mind controlled, but it is what it is. Because he basically loses all other encounters, which is a little sad, but, you know, it's a whole thing. The downside to this is that Ben goes into a coma right after. And thus he is asleep during the week that he becomes human. So he wakes up and he's already the Thing again, and he's like, oh man, I can't fuck anymore. Because that's what he's upset about, right? He was like, man, I can only fuck once a year. And I missed it this year. Shit's kind of funny, but a little sad at the same time. Because they're just like, oh, you gotta just wait now. Doesn't that kind of suck? This storyline's pretty short. It's only a couple issues. And it's eh. I'll admit, I'll probably be saying this a lot. I'm not the biggest fan of this run on the Fantastic Four. I think it falls flat more often than it does. Oh yeah, Ben will only age 1 week a year. Because his human body doesn't age when he's the Thing. So he will live for another, I think it's like 5,000 years or something. And we do know that he outlives the Four. Because we do get to, there's an issue, I think it's 605, where we get to see Ben as an old man, like way, way in the future, and he's like feeding birds, in front of the gravestones of Reed, Johnny, and Susan. It's really sad. Like, actually, though. That's probably my favorite issue of Fantastic Four. I love how it's written. Maybe one day I'll talk about that. But this storyline's kind of meh to me. It's fun for what it is. We get to see Ben in that Hawaiian shirt. Shit's cute. The next storyline is called Point of Origin. A storyline in which, because they donate the rocket that they originally went into space with to a museum, and this gets Reed very nostalgic, so he chooses to build a new rocket and recreate the launch that made them the Fantastic Four. He's like, no, we'll do it and complete the mission this time. Doesn't that sound good? Doesn't that sound fun? That is the plot of this comic. Like, Reed, what the fuck? I don't like this story. I'll be honest. I don't think it's not even that it's boring. I just don't like this story. I don't even think it's bad. I just don't like it. Like, on paper, I'm like, why would this be a storyline? And you'll understand in a minute. Because... oh, right. I also included these 2 pages because I wanted to talk about this scene where, of course, Ben, upon hearing that Reed is like, let's recreate the launch that gave us our powers, let's finish the mission, right? Ben is like, fuck no. That sounds awful. This is an awful idea, Reed. Fuck you. And as he's, like, saying all that, you can see Alicia there, and she's, like, making sandwiches and putting coffee in a thermos, and she's just doing her thing, right? And as soon as Ben sees that Herbie has replaced him as the pilot for this mission, he's like, nah, I'm not letting fucking Herbie replace me on this. I will be your pilot. And Alicia's immediate, like, by the way, I've packed you lunch, here's a thermos with coffee, because she knew the whole time that he was going to end up being the pilot, because she knows her husband. And I just think that's a really cute interaction. Maybe that's just me, but I thought that was cute. So they launch into space, right? They launch into space. They redo their mission, right? And instead, because they were trying to get to, like, a specific star originally, and that star ended up being a planet. So they crash land on this planet because, like, as soon as they get into around the atmosphere, they get shot down. I did not include a panel for that, I'm sorry. And you have this planet full of superpowered beings with their very unique culture, and it's really weird. But you find out that the leader of this planet, named the Overseer, is the one who shot the cosmic rays at, like, Reed's rocket, because they were like, oh no, we're being attacked, quick, shoot them down. Right? And I kinda hate this. Because it means that Reed isn't actually responsible for them becoming the Fantastic Four. It takes away that, like, ownership of it being Reed's fault when you just say, like, oh yeah, this guy's the one who shot them with the cosmic rays. It had nothing to do with Reed. Sure, Reed was the one who decided for them to go up into the rocket and fly out into space and shit. But it still feels like an ass pull, and I don't like that. The planet's kind of cool, though. They also introduce a new character named Sky, and her power is that she has wings. That's it. There's a bunch of superpowered beings on this planet. But this this culture is weird because they have, like, soulmates. Oh, excuse me. So the Overseer has a machine that can just predict the future. This is how he knew that, like, he used that machine originally to, and that was how he found out about the Fantastic Four, well, like, Reed's rocket being shot up. And he got a vision from this machine saying, like, these people will be responsible for the death of their culture. So that's why he shot them down with cosmic rays, right? But they also use this to just tell people, hey, your soulmate is X. So people on this planet, they just line up to find out who their soulmate is and marry them on the spot, I guess. It's weird, but whatever, alien planet, different culture, blah, blah. But this girl's soulmate, like, the machine told her that her soulmate is Johnny Storm. So she's like, oh, finally, I get to meet my soulmate. We're gonna be a thing. Even after they leave this planet, she follows along. They start dating. It's a whole thing. So Sky becomes, like, an off and on character throughout Slott's run. She is very underutilized, doesn't amount to anything, and she quietly leaves the comic with no consequences, kind of making me wonder why she was introduced and wasted 3 years of my life. But it is what it is, right? But much like, so they use the same, like, on this world, like, they use the cosmic rays that they shot the Reed's rocket with on their own citizens to try to make super beings. So there's a plot point of, like, sometimes they end up like Ben. Like, Sometimes like they'll just try to make someone into a superpowered being and they come out a fucking monster, and these people just get thrown into the trash. Like they just get thrown down into these slums and they're like, yeah, we don't want you because you're now a monster. So you have like this lad, right, who like signed up for this program to become a soldier, to become like a cosmic powered soldier, right? And it turned him into a monster, and he was disowned by his family and his service and thrown into a dumpster. So you have this like whole society of like superpowered beings on like the top layer of this planet, and then like in the catacombs of this planet you have like everyone who was thrown away because they became monsters. And it's like kind of fucked. You have so many aspects of this planet that's just like kind of fucked. And of course, like as soon as they see Ben, like when he crash lands, they just throw him down into these slums. While like Johnny, Reed, and Sue are allowed to like stay on the top. Whatever. That's weird, right? It's a whole thing. Naturally, Ben starts a revolution. He like riles up everyone who's been thrown away, and they're like, let's just take down the Overseer. One, because the Overseer used cosmic rays to turn me into a monster, but also all of you. So what the Overseer and this culture were afraid of, that the Fantastic Four would arrive and destroy their culture, legitimately happens. At the end of this story, they topple a tower, they accidentally, like, hospitalize the Overlord, there was a huge revolution, and the entire culture is broken as they found out everything was a lie. And... because people, the Overseer just told people that when people turn into monsters from the cosmic rays, they just literally become monsters. So they were okay with like throwing away their friends and family because of this. Real weird. It's really weird. Like this storyline has like some fun aspects, right? You're like, oh, okay, so it's like, it's kind of like a criticism of this like extreme culture and like, is it right or wrong to invade another person's culture and tell them that like it's a whole like commentary on that, right? I just don't like how it like kind of irreparably damages the origin of the Fantastic Four by not making it Reed's fault. That it's like, oh, it's this Overseer's fault, and you can see him there and like, he's the guy in the purple armor near the bottom of that panel, kind of like crushed under some rubble that Ben is currently standing on. Yeah, it's fun. Oh, hi, Selkie. Hello. I may have been doing this. I may have been. Now, I will say I do like the final scene of this storyline in which Ben tells Reed that like he's forgiven him and that it's all fine, and Reed is like, no, it's still my fault, because they're trying to save face and go like, no, it's like a huge part of Reed's character that it's his fault that like he ruined the lives of his friends. So they try to have this thing of like, oh no, Reed still thinks it's his fault, which is cool. It's cool. I only bring this up because look how cute Ben is in this sweater. Look how cute he is. He's in this like dad sweater, like fuck. He's so cute. Oh, and yeah, he has a cast from when he broke his arm fighting the Hulk earlier. That's just part of his design for a bit. It's kind of fun. If they disowned the monsters while knowing they were... Yeah, it's true, Cirrus. The story just, it happens a lot in Slott's, like, stories, in which I feel like there's just some things that don't quite land. And that's, like, in every single story arc. In most story arcs in this. Oh, right. So the next story arc was a tie-in storyline to an event called Empire. So, long story short, Empire is a storyline in which the Kree and the Skrulls are still warring with one another, and it involves the Avengers, the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four. It's a big storyline. I hated it because it's an event comic, and I typically hate event comic stories because it just it makes everything screech to a halt in all comics adjacent to the story just for this awful event. But the important thing is that they take these two kids into custody because they are like child soldiers, and they like try to free them. Like basically the Fantastic Four freed these kids from being child soldiers. And Ben takes a liking to them, which will be a plot point later in a minute. So during the Empire tie-in issues for the Fantastic Four, mercenaries that were sent by the Skrulls and the Kree, I think it was the Kree actually, to get back the kids that the Fantastic Four brought back into custody. But the Fantastic Four are off doing Empire shit. So the only people available at their base are Franklin Richards, Valeria Richards, of course, like Reed and Sue's kids, and two backup members in the form of Peter and Logan. So the four of them have to stop the kids from being retaken into custody. That is the storyline. It is brief. It is almost nothing but action series. I don't like it. It's boring. It's a tie-in event thing, so it's gonna be bad, right? The only reason why I mentioned this is to mention the kids whose names are Nikki and Joe, and also because Spider-Man and Wolverine get new outfits, and I do really like these outfits for them. Like, it's their new suits for the Fantastic Four. I love how they never include any of Spider-Man's Fantastic Four variant costumes in any Spider-Man games. It feels great. Isn't Franklin omnipotent? No. So Franklin is the ultimate builder. He can create things using cosmic powers. But a plot point in Slott's run is that those powers are now fading. So every time he now uses his powers, it burns away his energy, and it's now finite. So if he runs out of energy, his powers are gone. So you have a bunch of things where, like, members of the X-Men and, like, like Doom and a bunch of other powerful members of the Marvel Universe are, like, trying to help Franklin not use his power, like, not lose his powers, because, well, they're important, right? Just having someone in your back pocket who has the power to create with cosmic power is, like, you know, that's a nice weapon. That's a nice living gun that you can pull the trigger on every once in a while. And Reed, of course, is trying to shelter Franklin so he never becomes, like, used as a weapon by other people. It's a whole thing, which is reasonable. It's very reasonable. So the main thing to take away from the Empire tie-in storyline is that Nikki and Joe become adopted by Ben and Alicia. So even though they cannot have biological kids of their own, they adopt Joe and Nikki. This might be one of my favorite things to happen in Slott's run as a whole, is that, like, he is finally built, like, Ben now has a family. He actually just has, like, a wife and kids now. And I hope that's something that they never take away from him. I hope this is going to be just a thing going forward forever. That he just has his own family. It's really cute, and it feels like such an amazing payoff for, like, years of this character's existence. It's also really cute. One thing of note is this is also, if you don't know about Krakoa and shit, which is a living island that the X-Men claimed as their own and is now their country. So, like, mutants have their own country and politics and culture now. It's weird. But because Franklin is a mutant, they really want Franklin to join the X-Men, because Xavier is like, that's a gun I can use at some point, right? Because the X-Men are some of the most, like, morally bankrupt individuals in Marvel Universe. Like, they just look at Franklin and go, like, this is a weapon that we can use at some point. So they have vested interest into making sure that Franklin doesn't lose his powers. And of course, Franklin, being an edgy teenager, is like, oh yeah, I want to be a part of the X-Men. They're radical. They're counterculture. They're cool. They don't see me as just a gun. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, Franklin. I'm real sorry. But of course, this is... It's a whole thing. But that'll be relevant in just a minute. So, the next storyline, which is also the best storyline of this entire comic series. Like, of Slott's run, this storyline, titled The Forever Gate, is the cream of the crop. Easily the best one. And the reason for that is... one, there's this amazing interaction in which Susan, after snooping around and talking with Dr. Doom, casually calls Reed and is like, hi, honey, so I'm here with Dr. Doom, and he thinks you have a secret shielded mystery box, which if it fell into the hands of an all-powerful alien being could, like, threaten life on Earth as we know it. He's not right, is he? Earth? No. Tell me it's not the universe. I'll assemble the team. Like, that's a cute interaction. I really like it. But yes, Reed just left an infinite power source in the basement of a building that he no longer owns, so it's just left unprotected. And I guess he just forgot about it. Blessed. Fucking love Reed. He just left it there. I don't understand. But of course, there's of course an alien, and he's like, well, I want this power source, right? It's mine. It's mine. Give it to me. So Franklin is like, oh, because this is the height of him being like, I want to prove that I'm useful, and also prove, you know, mutant agenda, right? Half of Bracel is like, no. Alright, Michael, see you around. So if you don't know, there are these, like, plant-like gates throughout the world, and you can use them, like, mutants can use them to get to Krakoa. So anyone with the X gene, so the mutant gene, can just use these plant gates to just transport themselves to Krakoa. And so Franklin is like, I'll get help. I'll prove that, like, the X-Men are good people, and that, like, they'll help us. And when he runs through the gate, and nothing happens, because his powers are finally gone. So he no longer has, like, powers. He no longer is a mutant. The gates to Krakoa no longer recognize him as a mutant. And he even gets, like, a psychic message from Xavier. And Xavier is just like, oh, bruh, you're not a mutant. I don't care about you anymore. See ya. And it kind of leaves Franklin, like, devastated. It's also a good plotline for Franklin, I think. Side note, this storyline is also when the artist R.B. Silva starts being an artist for this series, and I love his background design. Look at this ethereal background, the way he uses blacks and these beautiful gradients, giving this, like, spectral energy to everything. It is the energy I want for the Fantastic Four, and I will miss him greatly. Because the work he did on this book was phenomenal. So the alien, like, gets a hold of the energy, right? This, like, power source, but they do defeat him. But that means that the energy source is now just out in the opening and is about to, like, start expanding and blow up and shit, right? So you have this amazing scene in which Dr. Doom and Reed have to combine their intellect to try to contain this energy source as fast as possible while making quips with one another. It's great. It's very comic book. I love it. I just wanted to mention that, because I do like that. So they do contain the energy, but what it does, the containment unit that they use now becomes a doorway because of just how this energy source works, which they name the Forever Gate. And this is a gate that can take you to anywhere in time and space. This is kind of a problem because it's one, immovable. They cannot move this gate. It just kind of exists now in the middle of New York City. And they're just like, well, we have to do something about this, because we can't just have a gate that people can access all of space and time. Right? Granted, they do use it to their advantage pretty quickly. Reed uses it to get back the Future Foundation, who have been lost for like 3 years. So the Future Foundation, if you don't know, is a group of young-ish characters who were up-and-coming geniuses that Reed wanted to foster into becoming, like, the caretakers of the next generation, essentially. He was like, I will find some of the greatest, like, child minds, or teen minds. He didn't get... It was mostly teenagers. And try to, I don't know, teach them the right thing to do with their gifts, and it was a whole thing. But they've been off doing... They're also a team in and of themselves that Reed kind of mentors. It's more like a team of geniuses that Reed mentors. It's a whole thing. But they've been lost in space for a while. So that means everyone who is associated with the Future Foundation is now back on Earth. This includes Alex and Julie Powers of the Power Pack. It had been like 5 years since they've been reunited, so like, I loved that about this issue. It was amazing seeing them united. I kind of hate that it's only in silhouette form in this one panel. You can see it there, where you have like, Alex and Julie's dad, like, being really excited to see his kids again. That's cool. But that also means we get Dragon Man back. And if you don't know, Dragon Man is a key character in the Fantastic Four. He dates back to the early 60s. He was basically a dragon statue given life by the villain Diablo, who's a master alchemist. It's a whole thing. It's actually just a whole thing. But because the Forever Gate exists, having something that powerful in the world notifies someone. Which, of course, is the Griever. So the Griever now has come back to use the Forever Gate for her own purposes. You know, she's just like, I am entropy, I will use this to, like, do a thing, I guess. It's bad celestial being do a bad thing, right? The good news, at least for me, is that this also is a story in which we get back an old Fantastic Four character who hadn't been doing much in Marvel. And that would be Norrin Radd, also known as the Silver Surfer. So side note, guys, I swear the Silver Surfer is cool. He's not lame. It's not stupid that he's just a chromatic man on a surfboard. It's not weird. It's cool. He's such a cool character. Anyway, he gets to come back, and it was just kind of like, oh, cool. Like, he's a friend of the Four, so he's coming back in order to help them defeat the Griever. Big thing. You know, since he's power cosmic, he also has the ultimate nullifier, and Reed wants that in case shit happens. And I do like some of the interactions with Norrin in this comic. And I'm not usually that guy who wanks over, like, power levels in, like, action things, because I don't really care about long-winded action. But I don't know. There's something about, like, the Silver Surfer coming back and saying, like, the power cosmic has to be enough, and, like, tries to fight the Griever by himself to give the Fantastic Four enough time to initiate their plan. It also looks really cool. Leading to probably one of my favorite scenes, in which, you only get to see the start of the battle, and then, like, it cuts back to the Fantastic Four, and when it cuts back to the Silver Surfer and the Griever, he has already been defeated. But you get the dialogue, 16 minutes and 4 seconds. That is how long you alone held off the end of the universe. You've earned my respect, Norrin Radd. There are precious few who could have achieved such a feat. Like, I don't know. I remember getting chills when I read that the first time. Like, it's kind of just cool. I don't know, maybe it's just me. But I kind of live for that in comics. But of course, they do defeat the Griever in a way that isn't just blunt force, we murdered her, and instead Reed decides to let her use the Forever Gate. Because all the Griever wants is to see the end of all things. So Reed allows her to use the Forever Gate to teleport to the end of the world. So that she can see it for herself. And I think that's a really cool way to wrap up the character of the Griever. And honestly was the high point of Slott's run. Which is unfortunate that it was only the halfway point. But it is what it is. It's not like the halfway point. Sorry, just give me one moment. There we go. But it's kind of unfortunate. I feel like this was like the only story that of Slott's and the Fantastic Four that really hit. It really landed. The hype moments all land. What the story wants to tell really lands. I didn't want to turn this into just talking about the Forever Gate story, so I left out like a lot. There's this whole scenario in which the Griever traps the Fantastic Four into these bubbles that force them to relive the moment they die over and over and over again. And you get to see the like moments and like possible ways for the Fantastic Four to die, and just them having to relive that over and over again, and the psychological effects of that. It is really cool. My favorite one being Dragon Man, because he was actually one that got sucked into that. Which was like the alchemist Diablo just going, I regret creating you, and just destroying his soul. Like taking away Dragon Man's ability to live. Which is something that like Dragon Man really covets, knowing that he's like an artificial being and constantly has this fear of that can be easily taken away from him. So I really like that scene. It's pretty cool. So unfortunately, after this storyline is when we get another event tie-in. Because of course it's a fucking event tie-in. So there was a storyline called King in Black, which was a Venom storyline, in which, like, the king of the symbiotes have arrived on Earth, and he just spreads his spawn everywhere. That's awful phrasing. He sends his servants everywhere, and they can do the Venom thing, right? They can do the symbiote thing, where they can just possess people, or, like, attach themselves to people and corrupt them. So you have a bunch of heroes and villains getting corrupted by these symbiote spawns, which is a whole thing, which, of course, Ben gets one of the symbiote spawns attached to him. And I do really like that. Instead of it just turning the characters evil, it brings out all of the negativity that they already had within themselves, right? So when Ben becomes a symbiote, he throws every insult and every single criticism he has towards Reed at him. And it's kind of, it's sad, because you're like, oh man, like, these are two best friends, and Ben says all of this shit, right? Like, he says, like, you'd risk all of us to keep going into the unknown. You didn't stop after it turned us into freaks. And you'll keep going until it puts one of us into the ground. Like, oh, it feels bad. But I liked this little storyline more than I liked Empire, because I think this kind of gets to the root of the characters more. It feels like it has more of a payoff to the comic itself, rather than just being like, we just have to slot a thing in here because of event shenanigans. And I know I criticized before that there wasn't, like, a cute bonding comic between Reed and Ben during the Mr. and Mrs. Grimm storyline. Well, I got that here, where, like, they end up at a bar and they just kind of air out their grievances and drink to it, and it's cute. It's real cute. I love these two. I love the friendship between these two. One of a comic that I really like. The next issue is weird. It's odd, and that is, Dan clearly wanted to do something with Franklin. He really wanted to do something, and I don't think it worked in the end. Mainly because he never actually followed up on it. But I do like this beginning. Like the beginning of this. So of course, after he's been dumped by the X-Men, right? He's no longer a mutant. Actually, he finds out he was never a mutant. And instead his reality warping powers just changed his genetic makeup to look like a mutant because he thought mutants were cool. So Xavier really doesn't care about him. But after all of that, losing his powers, all of this, Franklin's kind of a broken boy, He's an edgy teenager. And Reed and Susan realize that they can't help Franklin. They legitimately don't know what they could say to their son or anything. And so they sign him up for therapy. Much to Franklin's dismay, where he's like, I don't need to go to therapy. It's amazing. But the therapist they take him to is an old villain in the Marvel Universe who has been reformed. He's no longer a villain. But his powers was that he would immediately shapeshift into whatever your fear was. So Franklin was originally like, whatever, this will be stupid. Turn into Galactus. Turn into Doctor Doom. Nothing will scare me. And when this therapist transforms into Franklin, it kind of like opens up Franklin's eyes a bit of like, oh, like the thing that I fear most, the thing that I hate most, like, is myself. Like he's realizing how many like pent up frustrations he has like with himself that's tied to his powers and everything. So you like that. It's cool. I really liked this as a start. right? It is too bad there is no real follow-up. There's like one moment to follow up, and I don't think I include it because I don't think it's good enough. But it's a cool start to a story, you know? It's doing things. But they kick off, well, Slott kicks off a new story arc after this, which I also think is really, I think this is the worst story in the set. I really do. I always thought Magneto was the mutant elitist, not Professor X. You'd be wrong! See, the problem with the X-Men, right? No, the problem with mutants is that they are all bigoted mutant elitists, but they all think they're superior to each other. It's a whole thing. It's amazing. But the next storyline for Slott was a story titled The Bride of Dr. Doom. So he proposes to his Herald, right? He's like, my Herald, you have proven that you care a lot about me. On a business partnership kind of level. That you would do anything for me. Well, it would be within my best interest to have a wife. For basically points in like the global presentation, right? If he shows that he's a married man, a family man kind of guy, it would just make him look better. And what would make him look better? Marrying a peasant, showing that he cares about his people, right? A peasant turned general turned wife. What a storyline. Doom is like, that'll make good headlines. That'll make me look good. That'll make me look good in like news reports and shit. It's all good. So I didn't include this. But the panel right after this is, so she's sitting on her bed. And Johnny is currently under that bed because she just had sex with Johnny. Like, she just had a one-night stand with Johnny. Next morning, Doom calls and is like, yo, bitch, I need you to marry me. For political reasons. And she's just like, ooh, I hope he doesn't find out that I just had sex with Johnny. That would be unfortunate. Okay. So he's getting married, right? So this is probably one of my favorite scenes in this storyline. Is Doom sends Reed a letter that simply just is it's a drawing of a chess pawn and just a single word that says come. And of course Reed is like, this is a letter sent by Victor Von Doom telling me to go to our old college campus at the outdoor chess table that we used to play at back when we were college classmates, right? So why did Doom do this? Well, obviously he challenges Reed to a fencing duel. I can't. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. It's so over the top. So Doom wins. And as he, like, is standing over the defeated Reed, he simply says, I formally invite you to my wedding. He just wanted to one-up Reed before inviting him to his wedding. I don't understand. I totally understand. But it's like, what the fuck? What the fuck, man? This is so stupid. I love it. It's one of my favorite things that happened in this story. Even though it's kind of bad. My actual favorite thing to happen in this story is when the Fantastic Four arrive, right? A story in which Victor and Reed are gay for each other? No, you see, the problem is that Reed may be asexual. And so is Doom. But they would never, ever be in a romantic relationship with one another. It just is what it is. But this is my actual favorite scene in this storyline. And that is, Susan walks up to Doom and simply says, "All right, my problem is that you've mounted one of the largest royal weddings in history on Reed's and my anniversary, the exact date. How unfortunate, Susan. The significance of that date must have slipped my mind. I beg your pardon." Like, what a flex! What? Like, this man... Like, Doom's entire existence is just to try to one-up everyone else in his life. I respect it. I respect it and I love it. So unfortunately, that's like all the nice things I have to say about the Bride of Doctor Doom. I don't include any other panels because I just could not be bothered to go find them. Because the rest of the story is just that at the altar, right? His herald breaks down and just says, "I'm sorry, Doom. I cannot marry you without saying this. I have been intimate with Johnny Storm." And Doom blows up. He is like, "How dare you have been intimate with one of my rivals? I am calling off this wedding. I am also going to murder everyone here." And like, that's the storyline. He just gets upset and there's this big fucking battle. He's like somewhat defeated, but not really, because it's a Doom, right? Doom never gets actually defeated. He just stops fighting. That's what happens, right? And like, that's the end of the story. It's just, it kind of just ends with a huge wet fart. It's really unfortunate because it no longer changes like his relationship with his herald, because she just goes back to being his general and they don't really talk about it again. Nothing changes about like Doom's, like how Doom interacts with the world. It feels like filler. It's so meh. I think this was like the lowest point in Slott's run. It just wasn't, it doesn't land. It's so fucking boring. Did not like it. So after this point, there are a couple... This is when we start getting... We got the annual for that year, I think, for the Fantastic Four, which are just double-sized issues, essentially. And we got a couple episodic adventures. Because I want to... Because sadly, the Bride of Doctor Doom was the second to last story. It was unfortunate. It was very unfortunate. For, like, the longer stories, anyway. But there are a fair amount of one-offs. And I just wanted to mention a couple of them. So the page on the left is a storyline in which Kang, and Kang decide, they're just all having a chat, right? They're all having a meeting, and they start arguing about how, like, I could have beaten the Fantastic Four at any time. And so they pose a challenge like, fine, let us go out and just kill off the Fantastic Four in different timelines, right? Let's prove who can do it the fastest and the most efficient, or the most extravagant, right? And so it's a whole storyline in which you have like 6 versions of Kang all arguing with each other and measuring each other's dicks, right? You know, because you have Immortus, Kang, the Scarlet Sentry, whatever the other one's name is, I can't remember all their names. Ramatut, but it's much funnier to say, like, Kang, 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 and Kang. That one's a fun story. It's a one-issue story, but it's real fun. Legitimately. I had a great time reading that one. The next one I want to mention is Stars. Not written by Dan Slott, but instead written by Mark Waid, who knows how to write a Fantastic Four issue. Mark Waid has one of my favorite runs on the Fantastic Four, which was the 2002 to like 2005 run. Absolutely legendary. One of the best. But he came back to do one issue in which it was just a retelling of the Fantastic Four's origin, and kind of nothing more. It is also one of my favorite issues that occurred during this era of the Fantastic Four. Although it's just their origin story again, it is told with such deftness and just why the Fantastic Four are so important in the Marvel Universe. And Mark Waid, he just understands why. Which is why he's one of my favorite writers for this team. Another storyline that's like, it sadly doesn't have like a proper title. It's just like a 2 to 3 issue long storyline in which the Fantastic Four get sued by one of their old villains named the Wizard, and Jen gets to show up and, you know, be their attorney, and that was fun. That was just a fun couple issues. There were 2 one-shots that I wanted to mention. So, if you don't know, one-shots are one-shot issues that aren't counted as part of the number. So this isn't like Fantastic Four issue 47. This is just like Fantastic Four Grim Noir, Fantastic Four Road Trip, which for some reason were 2 horror comics. It's not the first time that Fantastic Four delves into horror. I just thought it was weird that there was 2 horror comics for Fantastic Four released pretty close to one another. One of them is more of a psychological horror in the form of Grim Noir, in which Ben has to, like, endure a living nightmare, which is my favorite of the 2, I'll be honest. I really like that issue. And Road Trip is a body horror comic in which the Fantastic Four go on a road trip vacation and nothing bad happens. Nope, no sirree, nothing bad happens. Ignore that cover. So the last storyline as part of Dan Slott's run is a storyline called Reckoning War, which finished up 2 days ago, ending Dan Slott's run on the Fantastic Four, which was a 46-issue long run. He has been on the comic for 4 years, so that is the main reason why I wanted to do this stream. Kind of get my thoughts on this era of the Fantastic Four just out there. Get it off my chest, if you will. And unfortunately, I have to say I did not like Reckoning War. I'm not going to include a bunch of panels showing you what happens because of how new the storyline is. It hasn't even been collected into a trade yet, so you can only read it as loose issues. Either physically or digitally, you know how it is. And it's unfortunate. It just kind of is. So this storyline is about an alien nation appears out of nowhere. Guns blazing. They have some of the most advanced technology at their disposal, and everyone's like, what the fuck? But of course there's a reason, and that is, if you are not familiar, there are beings in the Marvel Universe called the Watchers. They are entities that are all-knowing, all-seeing, except for when they're not, because plot. Which is why I don't like the Watchers. I've never liked them as a plot point. I've always thought they were kind of stupid. I've never liked the lore connected to the Watchers. They're just... It's a facet of the Marvel Universe I'm not thrilled with. Because it's like, look at these powerful beings that sit here and watch and do nothing, and, they're all-knowing. Unless we say so. Just like in this storyline. In which, like, they try to say that, like, this alien nation is the result of when the Watchers used to interact with the world. They actually, like, gave this alien race knowledge. They taught them agriculture. They taught them, like, community. They taught them language. And this just brought war into the universe. You know, it just kind of happened. And so this was one of the reasons why the Watchers vowed silence, that they would never interact with never interfere with the affairs of mortals ever again. But they also sealed off, like, some of the early Watchers just sealed off this race in like a pocket dimension. And so even the Watchers forgot about this. They just, like, and the newer generation of Watchers just straight up don't have the knowledge. Which is why when they show up, they're like, what the fuck? And it's just these big bad alien tyrant that's just like, I'm gonna take over the world because I was wronged, and blah blah, and Reed just, like, shoots him with a gun and he dies. And that's the story. Like, a lot of it is a bunch of, like, lore dumping. Like, the majority of the time, it's just like, oh, what's the nature? Like, what's the secret behind this alien race? Oh, why are they here? It's a lot of that for, like, the 6 issues. And it's just not very fun to read. And even, like, it's kind of anticlimactic when Reed just takes out a gun, shoots the leader, and then they're like, well, we're done, washed our hands clean of that, and move on with their lives. It just doesn't feel like a satisfying note to end out on. And sure, issue 46 is an epilogue issue. Like, technically, Reckoning War finishes up in issue 45, and 46 is just a send-off to this era. But even then, it kind of leaves just a bad taste in my mouth. You know what I mean? And it feels bad that's kind of just how this era of the 4 ends. Now, I'll say, like, what I said at the beginning, and that's I do not hate this run of the Fantastic Four. I enjoyed it for the majority of the time. I liked the storyline Forever. I really liked Forever Gate. Mr. and Mrs. Grimm is a lighthearted storyline that's really cute. Pretty much everything that has to do with Ben actually starting his family, I still hope they keep in the next Fantastic Four run, because it would be really sad if they somehow managed to take that away from Ben. They haven't taken away, like, Reed's family, so, like, why take away Ben's, right? But I wouldn't call this, like, a must read for the Fantastic Four either. That is probably the unfortunate part, is this is one of the more middle of the road entries. And that's not a bad thing. I think a safer run was probably the right call for Marvel, since it had been so long since the Fantastic Four, like, got canceled. So it's like, okay, we'll bring them back in a safe way. It'll be exciting at the start, lots of fan service, and it'll just spiral into these episodic, almost adventures, and just kind of peter out. And that's most of comic books, right? That tends to be how comic runs go. Where just kind of, like, the initial story arc or two are the big thing that the writer was worried about, and then everything else after, you can tell, and not that their heart wasn't in it, but it feels like it's going through the motions. Then a bang, yeah, Dragos, it really did. But I do love that this run exists. Like, I'll say that about this run forever, is that it brought back the Four, and I feel like that was more important than anything else. Just being able to reintroduce, like, the Fantastic Four back into Marvel, showing why that they're important, and, like, those first couple storylines really putting, like, what the Fantastic Four mean, like, front and center. That meant a lot reading at the time. And it still does. Like, I look back very fondly on, like, the first, like, 20 or so issues of this run. For the most part. But I also have, like, issues with Dan Slott's writing sometimes, where I don't think all of his ideas are fully thought through. Some of his storylines just kind of, like, end. Like, I think he thinks that, like, it ends with a bang. It's like, oh, like, Reed pulls out a gun and kills this alien tyrant. It's the ultimate nullifier, it's not an actual gun. But, you know, for all intents and purposes, the ultimate nullifier is a gun. And it's just it's kind of tragic. But I do really thank him for giving me this. Because this meant that I had 4 more years that I got to spend with this family. And that was all I really wanted. Like, when this series was announced, I was just kind of like, I kind of don't care if it's good or bad. I hope it's good. Like, you know, that's the hope. But at the end of the day, being able to, once a month, go down to a comic shop and pick up the latest issue of the Fantastic Four and spend an evening with them, you know, that would always mean a lot to me. And it still does. And I'm excited for whenever they announce who the next writer for the Fantastic Four is. Because as of right now, I don't think we know who the next big creative team is for the next run. The next couple issues of the Fantastic Four are just going to be a tie-in event issue. That's right, yeah. In a storyline called Judgment Day, which is a crossover between the Avengers, X-Men, and Eternals, but of course, it spreads throughout the Marvel Universe, so the next few issues are going to be a tie-in to that, so I'm sure that's a holdover to... We'll get the next, like, real start after that. And I'm excited for it. If you got the chance to write a Fantastic Four series, would you? I would probably say no. I would probably actually say no. One, I feel like it would be weird as a super fan to try to take the reins. Because I just don't know what I would, like, do, right? I have ideas, right? I could maybe, like, come be a scenario writer for, like, one-off issues. Because I of course have, like, things I want to happen. An issue that I, like, legitimately want to exist is, like, it's too old. We can't do it anymore because Franklin is too old. But I really wanted, like, an issue in which, like, baby, like, child Franklin, where he's, like, maybe 6 years old, like, him doing, like, his morning routine and trying to do something with each member of the family. Like, he goes to Reed, and Reed is too busy with work, and he can't do anything. Johnny is too busy arguing with his girlfriend of the week, like, over the phone or something, to, like, have Franklin, like, even, like, acknowledge Franklin. And Sue is too busy with something, and, like, Franklin is sad and detached, and then Ben walks through the door, and kind of like picks up Franklin on his shoulders and is like there for Franklin. And more than that, like Ben coming into the room like subtly gets the other members of the Four to like join in, and they have like lunch or something. Like I want that as like a one-shot issue, like showing that like everyone kind of it's been like a big thing in the comics forever that like Ben is the center of the team. Which is why he's in the center of this image, right? It's everything gravitates around him. He's the heart and soul, as it were, which is his official title on the team. Like he is always referred to as like the heart of the Fantastic Four. That's what Susan refers to him as. You'll also notice that any idea I have for the Fantastic Four probably revolves around Ben, and I'm not sorry about that. Because I would also want an issue about Susan overcompensating for Ben. Like, maybe Susan one day realizes, like, after doing so much work, that she has spent, like, 0 time with Ben. After, like, maybe hearing that Ben's been having a hard time. So she, like, forces him out of the house to go with her and having, like, a night out on the town or something. And have her, like, mess up every step of the way. Like, we'll do X. And it's something that, like, maybe her and Ben used to do back in college. But with him being the thing, he can't do that anymore. And so you'll have, like, what I want is, like, for that to keep happening throughout the evening. And have, like, Susan almost feeling, like, worse about her relationship with Ben, that she's failing, and maybe have like a touching resolution of like Ben understanding what she is doing and maybe being more reluctant and more just like, no, I get what you're doing, like I love you, Susie Q. Like, one, we have that nickname hasn't been used in years, and I would like that to come back, where he would occasionally call Susan Susie Q. I always thought that was really cute, because you did used to have moments where like clearly Susan is overcompensating, specifically like with her relationship with Ben, because of the tension, you know, right? Like Susan and Ben almost were an item at one point, like in their college years. So like they just decided to stay best friends instead of actually go for a relationship. Mainly because of Reed. Because she ended up choosing Reed over Ben. No hard feelings. Which is also something like, it comes up every now and again where Susan feels like she needs to overcompensate for that, where she ultimately chose Reed over Ben. Despite the fact that we know that she goes around fucks other men, but stays just friends with Ben. I see how it is. I realize that Ben can't have sex, and that's unfortunate for him. He can't have sex and he can't get drunk. How sad is that? Like, what else is there? Like, it is what it is. But yeah, I adore this team. I know that I basically just spent like 2 hours like gushing about this team because it's my fucking favorite comic book, but it just means a lot to me. Even when it's bad, which it is the majority of the time, because it's comic books. You get used to that. You actually just get used to that. When you're reading comics, you just realize that 90% of it's going to be terrible. But I will sign out for the evening. I don't want to bore you guys to death with me just gushing about the Four. I don't know if I'll do anything like this ever again. Probably not. I don't know. I don't know, tell me if you guys liked this or not. I feel like it was a bit too summary, you know, where all I'm doing is just, like, explaining what happens. Maybe I'll try something, like, different in the future. Because I know that, like, it was good just hearing you talk about it. Stuff you like? Oh, no. I talk about things I like on occasion, right? But okay, yeah, maybe I'll definitely think about, like, doing something else like this again. I don't know with what. Maybe more with the 4. Maybe I'll try something else. I used to read a lot of Batman and Teen Titans. Maybe I'll, like, do something with them again. Get all gushy about the stuff they like. Oh no! But Dragos, I have to continue pretending that I'm a cold, heartless monster, though. That's the standard for how people have to see me. I can't talk about my feelings. Probably try expanding things a bit if you wanted. Yeah, maybe I'll actually, like, try to put more than, like, 2 days of prep work into this. Because I grabbed the panels yesterday, or I guess 2 days ago now. And I, like, made these renders just before the stream. I was doing that for 2 hours, making these renders for it. Which was more annoying than I thought, because I had to do things like, I would edit out the white backgrounds, and then sometimes, like, have to, oh, I didn't there. But then also, like, try... You can tell that some of the earlier panels I did, like, layouts I did, I tried a bit more, where I'm like, oh no, I have to try and, like, make it, organize it to the page. Where I had to, like, edit the individual panels around. Some of them look alright. Some of them look okay. But yeah, tell me, I don't know, maybe, like, suggestions on what to do for the future? Maybe, like, do you all have any, like, questions about, like, things you want to know about? Like, maybe these characters or other comics that I'm familiar with. I can, like, aim for that, to do more of these in the future. Because I've read a lot of comic books. Really, I felt like I was able to do this one just because it was only, like, 40-something issues, and most of it I can, like, just kind of brush past. Ooh, talk about the X-Men. That one's going to be a little harder, just because I'm actually not that big of an X-Men fan, so I actually haven't read too much. The only run that I ever, like, really read was Jonathan Hickman's run, which was back in, like, 2018 or so. Because I'm a big fan of Jonathan Hickman as a writer. Because he's great. No talk shit about the X-Men. I will Selkie, did you not hear me say some of the things that the X-Men did in this stream? Xavier wiping his hands clean of, like, both inspiring Franklin to become an X-Men member, kind of trying to groom, like, Franklin, and then finding out he's not a mutant and just going like, nope, dumped. Like, the X-Men are some of the most, like, morally bankrupt individuals in the Marvel Universe. Like, Hank McCoy by himself has genocided people. And that's just Hank. That's not talking about what Scott has done, or what Wolverine has done, or what Jean has done, or what Xavier has done. It's like, wow, like, Magneto just being a mutant, like, the mutant equivalent of Hitler makes him seem passé. Like, oh, he's just Hitler. It's weird. I'd probably have to read a lot more if I were to do like an X-Men one. But I could try maybe like once a month, like choose like a comic storyline and do more research and shit and do a thing like this again. Yeah, I could probably do that. But I will end the stream now for my own sanity. Thank you for coming, and thank you for enjoying if you did. I know that this was very, very different, but I will see you around, everyone.